What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Aeron from the Wrestle Plug podcast. I'm here to discuss WWE Raw. It's the road to Wrestlemania. It begins tonight, the night after the Royal Rumble, but somebody forgot to put the keys in the ignition, and ultimately we got a false start. So hopefully it'll start this Friday, because this Raw was 4 out of 10. This was definitely the Bret Hart of Raw. Anyone who gets that, shout out and give me a like and a comment. And subscribe as well, because why not? Because we're nearly at 200 subscribers, and ultimately I want to start giving away some good shit to you fuckers. I didn't enjoy this Raw that much. I didn't hate anything, but I just found it really boring. Drew McIntyre comes down. Oh, I'm WWE champion, and I'm proud of everyone. Did you see what happened at the Royal Rumble last night? It's like, yeah, plug that so that more people might buy it. He's a great company guy. He's becoming Scottish John Cena in a lot of ways. I don't like that. I want to see Drew branch out and be his own champion. And ultimately, when Edge interrupts him and comes down and says, yeah, I'm a Royal Rumble winner and you're basically a bitch now, he's kind of right. You know, he says, what the fuck's happened to you? Why didn't you claim on me when I came in the ring? Phrasing, boom. And ultimately, you know, Drew's like, well, I'm a good guy, I suppose. Sheamus then comes down, interrupts the promo. It feels disjointed. He then turns on Drew as Edge leaves. That was thrown away really slapdash. Don't understand that. Not really feeling it. Neither am I feeling Matt Riddle on my screen at this point. Great in-ring worker. Hate the gimmick. So fucking... It's so cheesy. It's so boring as well. Bro. Dude, stoners haven't been cool for 20 years. It's like Vince McMahon has just seen an episode of South Park where all the goth kids get stoned. He's like, oh, that's good shit. Oh, yeah, make Matt Riddle more of a stoner. It's like, yeah, we all know Matt Riddle smokes weed. Just look at him. We don't need to be told that in his gimmick or what little gimmick he has. It's because he's shit on the mic. Let's just be honest about it. Matt Riddle is a crap promo. He's boring. And I've said this since the get-go. He is a magnificent in-ring talent. And the reason he was so exciting on the indies is because he was a legitimate UFC destroyer, walloping indie guys. But now he's in a WWE, especially a sports entertainment-based product, and they seem to be pushing him like crazy. He had such a long run in the Rumble last night, which ultimately infuriated me, because I'm like, get that fucking toss piece out of the ring. I'm trying to enjoy the Edge and Christian reunion. But, you know, he gets walloped by Bobby Lashley, and let's be honest, this was the scenario I wanted the most. They're two legit MMA guys, but if you're not going to do anything useful with this, Bobby Lashley should be a fucking killer. Look at him. He's a tank. Black excellence. He's got everything going for him. He's a United States champion. He should be going places. Now, Bobby Lashley isn't great on the promo either, but he doesn't have to be when you're that destructive and that massive. And also, he's got MVP to do his talking for him, and that's a good thing. But again, you just think, well, why did you bother having the match then if it's just going to get thrown out like this with a quick wrecking job? Okay, thanks for that. Same with the Retribution versus New Day angle. I get it. You know, Mustafa Ali, to be fair, is putting in a lot of work. But ultimately, nobody gives a shit. I am a Middle Eastern mixed race guy, you know, half English, half Egyptian. And I have championed Mustafa Ali for so long on this podcast because I want him to do well. You know, I want that kind of next level representation that I wasn't around to get when Iron Sheik obviously was representing so many people in the Middle East, albeit in an incredibly racist but hilarious angle nonetheless. I don't care if he wrestles Xavier Woods for a 50th time. Oh, good. Xavier Woods is wrestling another member of Retribution. It's the leader. Oh, I don't care. And he beat him. And I'm like, oh. I'm like, dude, it's like 2:30 in the morning. Give me something a little bit more. You know, I know ultimately we're not the only people watching it, and it is majority of people watching this, of course, will be Americans, but I don't care. I really, really don't care. Randy Orton's backstage, cuts a great promo. That kind of splits it up a little bit. It just felt like everything was like, you know, last minute classic Raw, quick, throwing it into different places. And all you got was at best a 4 or 5 out of 10, you know, and it frustrates me, because was it better than the last couple of weeks? Absolutely. But it is still not much of a marketable improvement on what they've been doing. And ultimately, it's so far behind SmackDown now and NXT in terms of its quality of storylines. And you can see why they're getting rapid drops in ratings as well because of this stuff. Because it's boring. The creative is going nowhere. I don't need to see this stuff. The Bad Bunny segment, again, like, I get it. You've put Bad Bunny on your screen. you know, he is going to attract quite a large market. Now, ultimately, there's been this big argument lately between people who don't like wrestling and people who do love wrestling. The majority of wrestling fans, from what I can see, don't give a shit about Bad Bunny. And why should they? You're watching wrestling. And of course, people who don't like wrestling or don't want to watch wrestling anymore have to defend Bad Bunny, particularly, you know, people of color and their community. First of all, I don't think he's that good. He's all right. His live performance wasn't fantastic last night. I've heard much better stuff. He's not a fantastic live artist. If that's an indication of how well he performs live, sorry to break it to you, that's not a good performance. Please go and watch guys like Prince if you want to see truly, truly magical live performances in music. I don't even think he's that good as a Latin artist. I think Cypress Hill blow him out of the fucking water. Come at me, children. Come at me. I really couldn't give a fuck. And I certainly couldn't give a fuck when he's on Miz TV with Morrison. This garbage just didn't need to be here. It's tacky, and he wasn't that good on the mic. He was okay. But ultimately, it was all a vehicle just so Damian Priest could come out and have a very subpar match with The Miz. And I love Damian Priest, and he is going to be magnificent. And they've got to use this guy right because Raw needs a guy like this. But ultimately, I don't care. Miz and Morrison are garbage now. That Money in the Bank is the biggest joke prop. They even fucking showed it backstage during, I think, the Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens match last night. Wow, I have never cared less about a Money in the Bank holder. I really have not. People laugh about Baron Corbin and Damien Sandow and what they did with it. This is much worse for my money. At least those guys are good at what they do at this point. Miz and Morrison are trash. And that's coming from a guy who loved The Miz for so long and really loved John Morrison just before he arrived. They need to separate these guys. Seriously, this was cringe. You know, the rapping and what's with the dumb frat boy humor that only appeals to 5-year-olds? It's such playground horse shit, and I don't need to see it. And Bad Bunny, you know, great. You know, he's out there. He's talking a little bit of Spanish with his Latin brother, obviously Damian Priest. That's great in the moment for about 5 seconds, but there's no longevity to it, and I don't give a shit. And obviously, I don't want to see the guy wrestle. By the way, sort your fucking hair out, mate. What the fuck is that on your head? State of your fucking haircut, mate. Again, one of the better matches of the night, actually, was Lucha House Party versus the Hurt Business. Now, they don't know what they're doing with these guys. This could potentially be one of your best factions of the modern era. They feel like, in many ways, Black Evolution is what I've heard people referring to them as. And you've got great promo guys and guys like MVP. Shelton Benjamin is obviously a really credible legend. Cedric Alexander is kind of that young up-and-coming talent, you know, in many ways. And obviously got Bobby Lashley, who was just the ultimate destroyer. Everything you want a WWE or wrestler superstar to look like. Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander have this really dumb kind of angle going on where they don't like each other or there's dissension in the ranks, and yet they still keep winning and retaining tag titles. So what's the fucking point then? What is the point of saying, oh, there's, you know, they can't get along, but they keep winning? Okay, so ultimately it doesn't matter. And if it doesn't matter, then why am I supposed to give a shit about it? You know, good match, by the way. I think Lucha House Party should have been given the opportunity to take the belts here. I really feel like they've put in a lot of great work recently. And although, obviously, from an entertainment standpoint, most of what you rely on from them is going to be in-ring, I just feel like they have something that people are connected to. And there's a lot of vibrancy and a lot of color that goes with that. And again, part of that brilliant Latin identity that they're building. You know, you've got Ray and Dominic. You've got Damian Priest now who's on this. You've got Lucha House Party, like I say. You've got Carlito coming back, who had a match with, you know, Jeff Hardy and two guys I don't give a shit about anymore, ultimately. But there's a great deal of Latin identity in wrestling, not just in WWE, but WWE's got a big portion of it. And it would have been nice to have seen Lucha House Party used a little bit more. That being said, it's nice to see him being used at all, because for a while, nobody even knew they were on the product. So it is what it is. And also, we're only a few weeks away from Elimination Chamber, and last year's Elimination Chamber arguably saw their biggest push to date. Who can forget that swinging little shooting star off the top of the cage during the Elimination Chamber tag team title match? It was pretty sick, to be fair. But, you know, Alexander and Benjamin retain. Whoop-de-doo, Basil. You know, decent match, fun match, but I don't care, and I don't get what the angle is with the two either. You know, it just feels like everything's being held together right now by MVP. And even he's kind of looking around going, I don't know really how I'm going to sell this to all of you, but I'll give it a go. and he was on comms and he did a reasonable job. And I always like hearing MVP talk. He's one of the better talkers this business has. Speaking of tag team divisions that woefully need some sort of fixing, the women's tag team division. Oh, Lord. So Asuka and Charlotte dropped the belts last night. Now we need to decide who the number one contenders are. Now, obviously, they dropped the belts because Lacey Evans and Ric Flair, which is gross, they interfered. Great. So they set it up nicely, didn't they? Asuka and Charlotte Flair are backstage. Asuka's kind of really looks quite anxious and quite distraught. It almost looked like she was a little bit, I don't know, she just looked very unsettled. And I don't mean from a kayfabe standpoint either. So I'm hoping everything's okay, because you never know. You can normally tell by someone's body language if something's not right. But she looked very uncomfortable backstage with Charlotte Flair. They said, it was a one-off time. We're not going to let it get to us. We're going to go out there and we're going to get the number one contendership. We're going to get our tag titles back. Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax are watching on from somewhere else. Triple threat match. Charlotte Flair and Asuka versus Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke versus Lana and the returning Naomi. I mean, ultimately both returned, but I care about Naomi returning a lot more. By the way, Naomi should be the next challenger for a major title, particularly if you're not going to go with Charlotte versus Asuka at WrestleMania. I personally think that Naomi should get the opportunity and Charlotte Flair should be going after Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania. That's just my cup of tea personally. But ultimately, this match should have been good, and it wasn't. It was very disjointed. It wasn't a case of it was a terrible match, but it wasn't a good match either. What happened in this match was there was a lot of standing around waiting for spots to happen. I've done my move. Now I'll wait, and then someone else will do their moves. And it looks, too fake, too choreographed. And at the end of the match, of course, we get Lacey Evans and Ric Flair again. Charlotte Flair this time goes, do you know what? Fuck it. I can't be bothered with this bullshit. Just tags in Asuka. Asuka's like, what the fuck, mate? And then she just walks out. Asuka gets hit with the rear view from Naomi. And boom, there you go. Naomi and Lana are now number one contenders for the Women's Tag Team Championships. Whoop-de-doo. So it's two tag teams that aren't tag teams facing each other for the belts. Great. These belts are trash right now, aren't they? Ugh. And I love a lot of these women involved. I think Naomi and Shayna Baszler are bona fide superstars, but who gives a shit? Drew McIntyre's backstage. He says, you know what, Sheamus, you want a match? You got it. Great. Next. Carlito tags up with Jeff Hardy against Jackson Ryker and Elias. Great. Next. Sorry. Great to see Carlito. But sorry, I don't give a shit. Why should I? I just don't care. Like, I know everyone loves Jeff Hardy and they romanticize him, but come on, man. It just looks like he looks like a guy who, shouldn't be. What frustrates me as well is WWE fans especially, and people who hate WWE, for lack of a better term, they're always banging on about, oh, here we go, bringing back veterans. But for some reason, Jeff Hardy's immune to this. This is a guy who's been wrestling for the best part of 25 years, and the majority of that time has been spent in WWE or WWF, other than obviously good tenures in TNA. The match with Sting not discounting. But I just don't care. And I sure as hell don't care about Elias and Jackson Ryker. What a terrible pairing that is. We're finally finding out what I have been saying for the last couple of years. Elias is a one-trick pony. He's boring. He reminds me of Ty Dillinger in a lot of ways. There are other guys who are a good example. Once you get Bobby Roode is another good example, actually. Guys who have this kind of gimmick and everyone thinks it's great and it catches fire, but there's nothing behind it, Nice, shiny kind of facade, nice, shiny front door. But when you open the door, there's nothing in the house. That's kind of what's going on here. Yeah, the guitar shtick and the hilarious jokes are funny. The way he kind of sings about certain situations, that's funny. But other than that, there's nothing else going on. He's a very mediocre in-ring worker. I don't give a shit. And then we get to kind of like the co-main events. Alexa Bliss versus Nikki Cross. Immediately, right, I'm thinking, what the fuck? So Nikki Cross comes out and she's like, why are you doing this? Why are you bringing me back into this? I told you I was done with you, and now apparently I've got to fucking wrestle you again. Oh, you want to fight? Let's fight. That's exactly what she said. And then what did she do? She goes for a collar and elbow tie-up and then puts in a headlock. Now, I don't want to sound like old man, but I have trained to be a wrestler. I love wrestling. And even if I hadn't, let's be honest, right? As a fan watching this, you're being told, especially if you're a casual audience member, right? You tune into this, you're being told that this crazy, deranged, schizophrenic, almost supernatural entity that is Alexa Bliss now she's had this, used to be really close friends with this Nikki Cross. Then she kind of buried her and destroyed her and left her for dead mentally. So this is kind of like revisiting that angle. So you're thinking, oh, wow, these two women must hate each other. And they even express that hatred, or at least Nikki Cross does. And then you see them just go, tie up. Fuck off. It's so insulting to people's intelligence. And from that point on, I had lost interest in this match because this match wasn't even that bad. There were some good little spots to this. Am I enjoying the camera edits that are kind of made out to be supernatural turns where she goes back to older Alexa Bliss, then turns back again? Not immensely, but I love where they could go. I've expressed this on our social media. Here's my theory. The idea is that actually Alexa Bliss, the real Alexa Bliss, is stuck almost in like a kind of alternative time zone. Bear with me. So she's stuck in this alternative time zone. And what's happening is when you're seeing her, even though she's not, like, for instance, last week on Raw, she was crying when you saw her in her original getup, or at least her older gear, before she turned into this kind of monstrous little girl. And I like the idea that she's trying to break out, and this is her way of showing that. And I'd love to see more advanced ones where, like, halfway through a match, all of a sudden it cuts to her and she's like in the corner crying somewhere and you don't know where. And she's like, please help me. I can't get out. Please help me. Like, really desperate, really clawing, to one speck of hope that she might somehow be released from this weird mental supernatural prison. So hopefully that's where it's going with. I'm willing to bear with this a little bit more because ultimately this has been probably the only thing worth watching on Raw for some time. Nears the end of the match, obviously she hits the Twisted Sister Abigail, her version of Sister Abigail, with a nice little kind of hammerlock DDT style finish. That's cool. Love that stuff. That's good. But yeah, ultimately I'm thinking, oh, okay. And then to try and make up for time, so they must have been pushed for time, Randy Orton comes out and crosses paths with Alexa Bliss. Doesn't acknowledge her, but stops next to her, and Alexa Bliss is kind of scowling, like basically how every woman has ever looked at me who's been in a relationship with me. I'm very sorry. And yeah, and then we get Edge versus Randy Orton. Straight into it. Edge comes out, and these boys go for another fight. Now, do I care? Yes. Do I care a lot? Not enough. And the biggest problem here isn't that this is a bad matchup, because these two have had some fantastic matches. It wasn't the greatest wrestling match of all time, but it was a good match. And I thought their last man standing at WrestleMania was fantastic. Yes, I know I'm in the minority. Stop fucking crying about it and stop tweeting me at WrestlePlug every time I say that match is good. By the way, it is good. Deal with it. And if you don't like it, why do you feel the need to tell me you hate it? If you don't like it, just don't like it. Great. It was a decent enough match. And throughout the whole thing, because obviously right before it, Edge had shook Damian Priest's hand, which was kind of like a little bit like when Bret Hart did it with Seth Rollins and Undertaker did it with John Cena, when they were first really kind of breaking out as big stars, and you got the impression they were going to be. And I thought, oh, okay, maybe Priest is going to interfere, because I've had a lot of rumors that maybe Priest is going to be facing Orton long term, or maybe even The Fiend's going to come out. And you could see it on social media. I'm watching the social media feed while I'm watching Raw, and I think, oh my God, it could be The Fiend. Oh my God, it could be Damian Priest. And ultimately, it's neither of those. Alexa Bliss appears up in the corner. She's got black treacle / blood, whatever it might be, pouring out of her mouth. It was almost kind of edited to look like a vision, because she all of a sudden wasn't there. Orton turns around like, what the fuck? What's going on? Turns back around, boom, gets hit with a spear, loses to Edge. Raw goes off the air. And you thought, that match really was a microcosm and an analysis for this whole show. It was okay. It had some nice little moments, but ultimately massively anticlimactic, considering what it should have been and considering what we saw last night. The road to WrestleMania has started, and I can't help but feel a little bit lackluster. I'm still excited. I thought the Royal Rumble was amazing. Please check out our review. Please tell people about our channel. I love doing this content, and I love it when you guys subscribe, and I love it when you guys comment and leave your thoughts, and I will absolutely persist in trying to reply to every single comment and making sure that you guys have your say. But ultimately, if you're watching it, please follow along with @WrestlePlug and comment. You can leave a message, you can contact @WrestlePlug, you can send us an email, wrestleplug@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts. It'd be lovely to share them on this YouTube channel and also on the audio podcast, which you can find anywhere you get your podcast by searching WrestlePlug, and then just boom, quickly clicking that lovely little subscribe button. But as far as Raw goes, yeah, bit meh, bit meh. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, I have been Aeron X. I hope you've enjoyed this. We're getting close to 200, so keep pushing, keep helping us out. Try and get your mates involved. It'd be great to have more of you watching our content and more of you interacting. But from myself, Aeron X, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you very soon for more content from the Wrestle Plug.